We know Trudy Chacon as a hero, the pilot who sacrificed herself during the Battle of the Hallelujah Mountain, the rogue pilot sacrificing herself to protect the Na'vi and her friend. In the canon timeline, she died a hero, her Samson torn apart by the RDA. But what if her fate was rewritten? What if she survived? What if moments before the missiles hit, she breaks low, diving down, and with the assistance of the Na'vi, made it out alive during this final battle? Would her war be over, or would it just be the beginning? In an alternate reality, Trudy would emerge from the Battle of the Hallelujah Mountains, wounded but alive, hidden by the thick foliage and cloaking interference of the Hallelujah Mountains. She radios Norm Spellman, whose relief floods the channel. "Don't write me off just yet," she jokes, despite the blood seeping through her flight suit. After Jake's victory over Quaritch, and in the weeks after the Battle of the Hallelujah Mountains, she's nursed back to health by the remaining human forces. Neytiri, having seen her sacrifice, begins to regard her role not as a sky person, but as a friend to the Metkayina. Norm and Trudy grow closer, bonded by survival and shared ideals. He had always admired her bravery, and she always respected his heart. And as we know from a deleted scene from Avatar, they did have a much more intimate relationship, and in this alternate reality, it would expand their journey together. When the rest of the RDA was expelled from Pandora, Trudy was given the option to return back to Earth, but she declined, as her old life no longer existed, and her new life, her love with Norm, started an adventure that she never expected. A few years after the events of the first movie, she and Norm stayed in the mountains, working with Max and a few others, trying to rebuild what was left of the science team. Grace was gone. Jake, in his new body, had almost forgotten his human life. It left a gap. Trudy filled it with flight, assisting the science team, now led by Norm, by scouting, mapping, watching the skies for any new burn trails that didn't belong. She was always good at survival, always seeking adventure. But one day, something shifted when the morning nausea started. She survived Pandora, she survived the Battle of the Hallelujah Mountains, but she did not expect what was about to happen. She was nervous, but excited. She didn't tell Norm straight away, but when she finally did, he just stood there, almost frozen in time. She smiled, stating, "You gonna say something, Spellman? Or should I go get my wings?" He laughed, stunned and quiet. "I just didn't know you were thinking about kids." It was a surprise, but a pleasant one for the both of them. As the months went on, the days got heavier, the nausea sharper, the isolation more acute. During her training with the RDA, Trudy always felt that her body was a weapon, a machine built for endurance and instinct. Now it was something else entirely. She wasn't sure what to expect, but with Norm by her side, she knew everything was going to be fine. He held her hand when she let him, gave her space when she needed it. He didn't pretend to understand the pain she went through, what it meant to bring new life into a world, but he was always by her side, and that mattered. The birth came in the middle of the night during heavy rains, as thunder rolled in the background, almost as if Awa was watching over. Mawat was also there, as she knew her presence alone brought calm to the situation. Trudy never expected to be a mother. It wasn't planned, but when Trudy saw her daughter for the first time, she knew it was meant to be. When she held her daughter for the first time, the child looked up at her, blinked, eyes wide and unmoved by the thunder. The years came fast. The child grew up shoulder to shoulder with Spider, the two of them a pair of in-betweens in a world that didn't quite know what to do with them. One born of war, the other raised in its aftermath. They fought like siblings along with the other Sully children, vanished into the trees, came home with bruises and stories and feathers braided into their hair. It was a different life than Trudy had growing up. She taught her daughter how to shoot straight, how to climb without thinking about falling, and how to know when your enemy is near. Don't wait for trouble, she'd say. By the time you see it, it's already behind you. Norm was a bit softer, more patient. He balanced the fire in Trudy with something she never expected to appreciate: stillness. Sometimes she'd watch him reading old journals out loud to her daughter, his voice low and even, and often while she watches them, she wondered how she found happiness in the most unlikely places. But she knew at one point that war would return. Everyone always knew that the RDA would return, but nobody expected to what scale. About a year after the RDA started rebuilding, Norm and Jake began attacking small outposts, delaying the expansions of certain areas, and although Trudy wanted to help, it was Norm who told her to stay with her daughter. However, on one rainy evening, when Jake and his family had a close encounter with an enemy they did not expect, they contacted Norm, informing him of what was about to happen. It started with static over the long-range comms, then a name she hadn't heard in over a decade: Quaritch. Trudy stared at the radio longer than she should have. Norm was already cursing under his breath, pacing up and down, but her body didn't move. She wasn't frozen, she was calculating. This can't be right, she said at first. Norm looked at her and said, in a cold and calm manner, "It is. He's back. Not human. Not exactly." She leaned against the wall and slid to the floor, hand over her mouth. Her heart didn't race. It slowed. The world outside kept turning, but the past just walked back into the room in a recon body and combat boots. That night, she stood outside, eyes on the stars. Her daughter was inside, curled up and sleeping, as Trudy only spoke of the bad man and never really mentioned Quaritch by name, especially not in front of her daughter. She should have felt safe, but all she could feel was dread. She remembered Quaritch's voice, his arrogance, the ease with which he gave orders to kill, the moment he shot Grace, the moment he tried to burn an entire culture from the sky like it was just a line item on a spreadsheet. And now he's back, upgraded in some way, unburdened by consequence. Norm saw her looking up at the stars, walked up to her and said, "You're thinking about flying again." She didn't answer. "You know what that means for her." "I know exactly what it means," she said quietly, "and I'm not sure I could live with her growing up not knowing who I was. But I also don't know if I can look her in the eye and stay grounded while he is out there." She took a deep breath and said, "If Quaritch is still breathing, then I'm not done fighting." Norm didn't try to talk her down. He knew it would be pointless. He just looked at her and said, "Well, then you better go dust off your wings." The call came from Jake. They were moving to join the Metkayina. The sea clans were rising. The final push was coming. Trudy loaded her Samson in silence. It was already half ready, its frame patched, its weapons rudimentary, but it would fly. She stood in the doorway before she left. Her daughter looked up at her, quiet and knowing. Trudy kneeled, touched her face and said, "You're stronger than you think, and you've got your own sky to fly one day. But this one's mine." Norm stood beside their daughter, looked at her and said, "You better come back." She gave him a look, smiled, and although she didn't say anything, he knew exactly what she wanted to say. Then she climbed into the Samson, took one last look at her family, and lifted off into the sky. As the jungle disappeared below, the clouds parted ways, as she had set course for the Metkayina to join Jake in the war against Quaritch. This war wasn't over, not yet, but she'd be there when it ended. In this version of events, Trudy Chacon lives, but her memories often haunt her, as she has to make choices that have heavy weight now that she has a new family which she needs to protect. Does she make it back from the Battle of the Sea? Does she get her revenge on Quaritch? Does her daughter grow up remembering her mother as a soldier or as a distant memory? The rest would be up to your imagination, as this is the first in a series of what-if fanfiction stories set in the world of James Cameron's Avatar. But how do you think the events would play out if Trudy survived at the end of the first Avatar movie? How would you write her story? And what do you think about this alternate version? Do you have any different ideas? Over the past few months, I've written quite a few of these alternate timelines or different scenarios, so if you do like to see more of these in video format, then let me know in the comments below, as I really enjoyed working on this, editing it, and any feedback would be greatly appreciated. But for more Avatar content, have a look at the rest of my channel. Until next time, have a fantastic day and stay safe.